you doing? I'm Gemma. My business is You Say Tomato Cooking, and today I am talking about one of the ingredients that gave my business its name. And at this time of the year, I think we're all cooking a lot more because it's in season, and that is tomatoes. So I'm going to give you a little bit of advice today on a few things that I think are really helpful. So how to store tomatoes, because a lot of people do that wrong, how to chop them properly, how to season them, and I'm also going to show you how to make a really yummy pan con tomate, which is like a toasted bread with garlic and tomato. So by the end of watching this, you are going to know exactly how to deal with your tomatoes all summer, how to get the most flavour out of them, and what mistakes not to make. So before I get started, my business name is You Say Tomato, and that is because I started it when I was living in America, where I was tomato rather than tomato. And I love tomatoes. I think for me, they are that flavour of being on holiday. It just reminds you of arriving in France or Spain and buying tomatoes, and they've always tasted so much better than they do at home. Reason being, they're grown in the sunshine. And the first kind of tip is don't be eating tomatoes in the winter, because unless you're spending a lot of money on having them flown in from somewhere, they're just not going to taste that good. Yes, you can buy tomatoes in the supermarket all year. They're very flavourless. They look like a tomato, they don't taste like a tomato. So what I recommend is at around this time of year, in the summer, have loads of tomatoes, and then once it gets to sort of autumn time, start using tin tomatoes, canned tomatoes and things, because that's going to have a lot more flavour. So right now, you're going to find these beauties in the shops. You can either get them through the post, a lot of veg box deliveries are doing them now, and you get more interesting varieties, or at the supermarket. Always try and buy local. So if you're in the UK, buy British. If you're in America, buy American, local to where you are. These are what you'd call like an heirloom tomato. So they're usually more expensive, funny shapes, look a bit more like the ones that you would see on holiday. They have really lovely flavour and also really nice colour. So it's going to make whatever you make look prettier. So I'm going to show you today how to chop them and a little trick, and then the things that we've chopped we're going to turn into the tomato toast that I talked about. So first thing, when you're doing tomatoes, you always want to use a serrated knife. So either something like this, like a steak knife, or this, which is an actual proper tomato knife, or just a good old bread knife. The reason you want to use a serrated knife is it just gets through the skin much more easily, so you're less likely to squash them. So I'm going to move these out of the way. Let's start with this one. So a lot of people will start just chopping, but the first thing to do is to get rid of this core, because that doesn't taste very nice and it's very tough. So just pop the end of your knife in, and just kind of sort of at a 45-degree angle, just cut round in a circle, and then out pops the core. Done. So now you're left with kind of pure tomato. And some recipes will tell you to take the seeds out. I don't like to. I think if you're buying really nice in-season, flavourful tomatoes, the seeds and the juice inside has lots of flavour. I think if you're buying tomatoes out of season and the juice and the seeds bit can taste really bland, so it makes everything else taste bland. But at this time of the year, I absolutely leave them in. Whenever I'm chopping, you always make your fingers into a bridge and the knife is a train going through. So fingers in, and that keeps your fingers safe. You see, chop it up. Obviously you can chop this any way you want. I'm just doing little slices. Other thing you'll notice, I'm chopping that way because that side of the tomato is much easier to cut than the skin side. A serrated knife will help you cut in on the skin side, but it's just a bit harder. So that's one of the tomatoes done. Let's pop them in a bowl. And then let me show you another little trick. Now, I was meant to do this with cherry tomatoes or baby tomatoes, but my kids have eaten them all. So I'm going to do it with medium-sized tomatoes. So just go with me, imagine this. If you've got a big pile of baby tomatoes to chop, rather than doing them one by one, this little trick is really handy. It also works with grapes. So you just want to get, like I say, imagine these are much smaller, much more fiddly to chop. You want to get two kind of takeaway plastic container lids. You want to put one of them on a board with the lip bit facing up and the tomatoes on it, then get another one, put it on top, put your hand down, and then get a big knife, bend down, and you can chop all the way through all the tomatoes in one go. Job done. Like I say, you're not saving a huge amount of time with tomatoes this size, but if you've got little baby tomatoes, it saves you loads and loads of time. So I'm going to put these in the bowl. And you can already start to see by having these different colours, it just starts to look gorgeous and really exciting. So that's how we chop them. So serrated knife, get the core out. If they're really little, use the lids. I'm going to show you how to make a little tomato salad now. So tomatoes love salt. And if ever you want to understand the power of salt in cooking, taste a bit of tomato on its own and then taste it with a bit of salt, and it just makes everything taste sweeter, more balanced, more delicious. Anyone who's worried about eating salt, like, don't worry. If you're cooking yourself and not using a lot of processed stuff, it's fine to add some salt in cooking. The reason we're told not to eat salt is because so many people eat so much processed food and therefore their salt level's already really high. But if, I'm hoping by following me, you're kind of getting the message to cook more from scratch. So if you're cooking from scratch, add some salt. By the time your food tastes too salty, you're probably still not at the point of reaching the amount of salt you're about to have per day. So just trust your taste buds. So I'm going to use some sea salt. Put that in, and then I'm just going to give it a bit of a zhuzh around. Like I say, even like that, that's going to taste amazing. But just to add another layer of flavour, I'm going to use some red wine vinegar. Now, tomatoes are kind of acidic and sweet, so you might think it's a bit weird to put something else in that's acidic, but actually the sourness of vinegar just sort of brings all the flavours together and enhances the sweetness. So just a little bit. Again, that would be delicious as it is, or you can become a bit extra, put some olive oil in. Okay, good olive oil. This one's nearly empty. The kind of olive oil that you would use for salad dressing, so something about the £10 mark. Like I say, delicious, but then if you want to make it even nicer, put some basil in. Now, when you're picking basil, this is just a supermarket basil pot. You want to try and just pinch the big leaves, leave the little leaves, and then your basil plant will keep growing for ages and ages. Which at the moment, I'm trying not to go to the shops too often, so that's great. So pinch off the big leaves, and also remember to water it, which I'm rubbish at. And with basil, you don't really want to chop it, you want to just tear it. So that goes in. Now, this would be delicious just as a salad with anything. Roast chicken, stirred through some pasta, really nice, like a raw tomato salad. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it into pan con tomate, which is a Spanish thing you might have had. People have it for breakfast there, but you'll get it often when you get tapas. So all I've done is I've toasted a bit of sourdough bread. Then I'm going to get a bit of garlic. And I'm just going to chop each end off the garlic, squish it, and that will help the skin come off. And then you're going to rub this on here. One thing that I forgot to say to you, which is so important about tomatoes, is never ever keep them in the fridge. When you put them in the fridge, the coldness makes the cell walls of the tomatoes kind of collapse and go a bit woolly inside. So always keep your tomatoes in a bowl on the side because they will just taste so much more fragrant. Again, if you want to test it, cut a tomato in half, put half in the fridge for a couple of hours, leave the other half out and taste the difference. It's a great thing to do with kids, especially if you're bored. I mean, you must be really bored to start doing that, but right, there's your garlic. So what I've done is I've rubbed the garlic on the bread, and the abrasiveness of the bread has kind of grated the garlic a bit. So it's not going to take too much off, but just enough to sort of scent it. Then what we're going to do is put some olive oil on. Again, your good olive oil. And this is such a nice thing to do with drinks, or for like a nice lunch. You could do it with some mozzarella. Then I'm going to get some tomato, and you could either just pile on this stuff here, and it's probably more like a bruschetta then if you do that, or if you wanted to be very Spanish about it, you'll just cut a piece of tomato and then just literally rub that tomato, and again that roughness of the bread is going to almost grate the tomato. This reminds me of live pre-kids when I used to go to music festivals in Spain, and the next day we'd feel so delicate. The only thing we could cope with eating was this. So can you see, it's got all that gorgeous tomato, and it's nearly all the tomato is gone out of the skin. And then we're just going to finish that with, I'm sure you guessed, a bit of salt. And that is just such a treat. You could put some prosciutto on top of it, you could put some salad on top of it, fried egg. anything. It's just, for me, the taste of summer. So I hope that's helped. There are loads more tomato recipes on my website, and I'm actually doing a special edition of my newsletter where I'm going to do loads of tomato recipes and recap on all these tips. So if you'd like to sign up for that, you can leave your details in the comments. Any questions about tomatoes, any questions about anything really, get in touch and let me know what else you'd like me to talk about next. Thank you.